Okay, the next relationship we're going to look at is the relationship of progression. A progression is like series, but each proposition is a further step toward a climax. It's just like series, and yet it's like we're walking up a set of stairs to a climax, toward the zenith, toward a mountain, toward a goal that we're trying to reach. So while each one is making its independent contribution, there's also an emotional feeling that accompanies progression as these things add up toward a climax. Some of the key words that you'll see with progression are going to be similar to series, but prominently the word then, but also the word and, the word and, words like moreover, furthermore, will also be used as we move closer to this climax. The way we're going to symbolize this is with a P, and just like with series, we're going to write our P for progression between the arcs of each proposition, and then we're going to draw one arc over the top of all three arcs to designate that these are in series, and yet there's a progression that's happening leading toward a desired goal or toward a climax that the writer is writing about in progression. Let me give you an example of propositions in a progression. Here we have Romans chapter 8, verse 30. And those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. Here we have what's often referred to as the golden chain here of the Lord's work in salvation in Romans chapter 8. And so we're going to identify first, now that we've defined this passage, we're going to identify and each of the propositions that are being made here. So first we have a verbal assertion or a proposition, and those whom he predestined, he also called. We could be tempted that predestined is a verb, and yet it's part of this noun phrase, those whom he predestined. This is all modifying the word those. So those whom he predestined, what's the verbal assertion that's being made about these people? He also called them. So that's how I would divide out the first proposition. Those whom he predestined, he also called. And is our connection word here. So there could be series or a progression. And those whom he called, he also justified, second proposition. And third proposition, those whom he justified, he also glorified. So we have three propositions. So let's divide out those propositions first of all, so that we can begin to think about, is this a series or a progression? And those whom he predestined, he also called, comma, and those whom he called, he also justified, and those whom he justified, he also glorified. So we have verse 30. We're going to label these. 30, A, B, and C. Draw our line and an arc over each proposition. And then we have to ask, what is the relationship between these? We certainly have, just like in series, these keywords and so this could be considered a series, and yet there's this sense that we're moving from up a stairway, climbing a ladder, climbing a mountain toward a destination. In this case, the destination is glory. The destination is glory, that these people whom he predestined, he moved toward calling, and then toward justification and glorified. And these things are also, as many people have pointed out, in the past tense, as if this is already done and decided. But the predestination is not an end in itself, neither is the calling. And while these make an equal contribution, along with the other propositions, the destination here is clearly glorification. And so I'm going to call this a progression, and I'm going to label that here, as we said, with a small p between the arcs, and then draw one arc over all three to say that while each proposition gives its own equal contribution, they are in the relationship of progression, because there is a progression of thought from predestination to calling, and then to justification and to glorification. And so we walk with Paul up that mountain, up that stairway, as his thought progresses in that direction. So that's one example of the relationship of progression.